I've just arrived on the new job site. We're here in Bullhead, Arizona. We're gonna do a front block wall off the front of this garage across. It's gonna be gray block with one course of split face and then a flat 2-inch cap. Also a property line wall at 5 feet where this chain link fence is. Right at front of garage, we're gonna step down to 4 and then to 3 within 10 feet of the street, and that'll be the end of the wall because there's an easement. We're gonna get this prepped, get all the footing dug, and then we're gonna start with the walls. Will be the first thing we do here. Block wall is gonna be the same as this block wall right here. So you've got gray block, and then you've got the gray double-sided split face, 6-inch block, 8-inch block on top, and then a 2-inch flat cap. Then every 15 feet you've got 8-inch columns, you know, H blocks and A blocks. So your H is in the middle, your A's are on your ends. We're gonna come right down this wall here. I've already had underground come out here. You can see the markings. So here's your gas line, probably 2 feet deep. This is a brand new build, so did a ground set, manufactured home, very similar to mine, same square footage actually. Here's some oleanders that are coming out. We got to rip these things out of here. Come down here, another oleander right here, that's got to go bye-bye. All this chain link's coming out. Matter of fact, that chain link's going to get repurposed at a different location. So down here along this driveway, we're going to be widening it a bit. We're going to come out here approximately 6 feet all the way down, so that's going to get widened. That's pretty much the whole project. I think I've covered everything, so now it's just a matter of doing it. I got to get my tractor out of here. I've got a nice little setup here for this kind of job, these residential gigs right here. Got the hoe attachment, you can see there. There's your hoe, 12-inch bucket, great for the footings going in between houses. And then I've got, you know, just a flat bucket, so that's going to do a lot of the heavy work for us. That's why I got underground out here. You're using equipment especially, you need to know where stuff's buried. Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. This is the removal process of the existing perimeter property line chain link fence. We're just going to clean this whole property up pretty much, and as well as some of the neighbors. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the obstacles, and as I do that, I'm going to be checking grade at the same time. That way I can repurpose any dirt that comes out of the footing to any low areas around the property. Basically, the way I'm removing those posts is I'm kind of hooking them and wedging them inside the bucket, and then I'm just kind of prying them up. Some of them came up with the footing, some of them didn't. But it's not going to matter. Once I put the hoe attachment on here and I start coming down the footing, any remnants of those post footings will come right out. The nice thing about digging on a property line is that there's usually never any utilities on a property line. They're usually, you know, to one side or the other. Like it'll be either on the neighbor side or it'll be on the side you're working on. But it'll never be right on the property line, so there's never a lot of worries digging foundation for a block wall on a property line in most cases. Other than the backyard that we're going to get into pretty soon, we have a lot of utilities in the backyard, kind of like a spaghetti bowl of wires laying on the ground back there. But we're going to get into that pretty soon. We had no problems at all digging, no obstacles though underground. That worked out pretty good because it gave me an idea. I think we had 4 utilities companies show up. One of them, however, didn't show up, and that was Mohave Electric. They failed to show up on this site to mark out their underground, but it was fairly obvious where it was. So we took a guess at that. Right here, I'm just grabbing the chain link with my teeth, pulling it back very slowly because we've already ran into wiring that was run through the chain link by the cable company. And we know we have electric buried underground. It runs between the back of these houses. As we're digging this footing out, we have the laser level set up. We've already established elevation for the concrete that we're going to be doing around this house. So we've got stamped concrete in front, terracotta color, ashlar slate, and then around the whole perimeter, just your basic broom gray concrete, plus a little driveway widening, and decorative gravel. So as we dig the footing, we need to know that our footing depth is going to be low enough that when we start setting block, we can cover that entire footing with either the decorative gravel or the concrete. Basically, our starting elevation is off of that. You can see the block that's setting, the house is set on. It's not actually set on the block. It appears to be set on the block. It's actually set on jack stands. The block is just retaining the dirt. So you have a crawl space under that house, basically. Why that block's sticking out beyond the house, I don't really understand, because the block went in first, then the house was set on top, but that block is a real eyesore, kind, you know, sticking out like that, and that is top of elevation. But at some point, I think we'll cover that block with some kind of an overlay material just to dress it up. I can't pour over it because that would encase the wood siding of the house, and then it would rot out. So we can't go above that. You can see my trenching is not that straight at this point. So we had some paint lines, but with all the maneuvering that I had to do, and this is pretty sandy soil, we lost paint as we came down, but we kind of double checked it off the house here and there. So as we came down this side of the house, on the property we're working on, the dirt was much higher than the neighbors, probably about a foot. So as I came down through here and cleaned out the bushes, I also took some dirt out of this side because I knew that once I got the wall up, it was going to be a lot harder to get through here. And also it's a lot harder to dig the footing on unlevel ground. So that was the first one of the things I did. I moved a lot of the dirt around to the hole in the front yard, where we're going to be showing another video pretty soon on the terracotta stamp pattern that we did. Here's some of the wiring. Eric's just holding it up so I can get a lot of the bulk material out of here without hitting the wire. But we are going to inevitably dig this back trench completely by hand. I'm just going to get it close and get it down to grade at least, and then dig by hand. And this is where the wires were going through the chain link fence back here. So we just cut around it and pulled them out. So we have your cable box on the right, and if you see to the left there, that's your electrical pole box there. We didn't get any marks from the utility company on that, on the electric though. I mean, I could have called Dig Alert again to notify them that they failed to show up the first call, but I just had a feeling, well, I know where it's at. All right, guys, we're on day 4, early in the morning. This is what we've got accomplished in 3 days. 250 feet of footing dug out and chain link fence removed. And we got a little bit of grading going on that we've done. All the footing dirt went into this area. This whole front yard seemed like a concave dip, low point. So all the footing dirt went in here. We're gonna have to bring in base too, because this is a big chunk of concrete. Ashlar slate stamp, terracotta. Here's the other side that we've got all prepped out. Almost ready for concrete to go in. We just got to tie some verticals, 1/2 inch every 4 feet with some 6-inch tails, and then that's ready to pour. But look at this cluster of wires. And I mean, if you had a lawn here, you wouldn't be able to mow it because these wires would be getting tangled up in your mower. That's how deep these were buried. I mean, that's just this side. Let's take a look at this other side. This is, matter of fact, you know what's interesting? It's just mind-boggling, really. They had the cable running through the chain link fence. Instead of digging under it, they just pulled it right through the chain link fence. Pretty amazing. Look at this cluster. These were all just laying right on the ground. Look at this thing. So these 2 cables were actually going through the chain link. So we had to cut around the chain link to get them out of there. That was a new one for me. Hadn't seen that maneuver yet. Oh, come to think of it, some of it was actually stretched along the top of this wood fence. They ran it and intertwined it through the slats on the top. So we had to untie it from there too. It was pretty baffling, but just a day, another day's work. All right, so we've got all the footings dug. They're about 15 inches deep, 15 inches wide. We got some of the blocks have already arrived here. I grabbed a couple pallets ahead of time, but our major shipment will be arriving soon. We have about 15 pallets coming in. As you can see, we're using that cordless Milwaukee cutoff saw, 14-inch. And we also have a water hookup to it. And the nice thing about that tool is when you hit the switch, the water comes on. When you're off of the switch, the water shuts off. so you don't get a big mud hole. Pretty nice. And you don't have to, you don't have all those stop and starts. You just pull the trigger and it's ready to go. And I did an experiment too. When my masons inevitably arrived up here, I had 8 guys come up here to help me with this wall. I had 2 machines here. I had the standard steel gas powered 14-inch, and then I also had this one here. And just to see which one they would grab the most, what I found is that the gas one never got started on this entire build. They kept grabbing this one, and that was it. I mean, it makes sense because you don't have to keep stopping and starting, pulling. It's just so much nicer. I'm just prepping the splits. So my guys are going to show up on pour day, and I want to get enough splits cut. That way when the concrete arrives, it's pretty much ready for them to just start setting. There's my decorative concrete setup. We have S out here. They're going to supply the concrete for this footing, also for the stamped concrete. On the footing itself, we have 10 yards, 10 cubic yards of concrete on all the footings. That's what I ordered, and we did have enough. See, we have all the tails tied in at 4-foot spacing. Also, we're going to do double bars in every column. We're going to do a horizontal in the top bomb beam of that 8/8/16. Right now, we have a string line set level from the back of property to the front. You can see how they're measuring down. They're measuring down in either 16, 8, or 20-inch increments. 20-inch would be for a splitter if you have a step down, but typically it's just 8 and 16. But the reason we use splits in some cases is because that saves us having to dig down deeper, and we still get a substantial thickness of footing. That's the difference between splits and no splits. Less digging, same footing. And you're not losing any block. You're probably saving block actually, because every block you cut for a split, you're getting 32 inches rather than just the 16. Here's some of the mortar. We've already been wet set. Now this is, they went ahead and continued, because we're out here, it's probably about 90 degrees and it's dry. Our humidity here is about 15. So concrete dries pretty quickly, cures out in about 3 to 4 days, depending on the thickness, but they're able to set this entire wall. They couldn't build it fast enough really, and this footing would hold it. I've been in some areas, like in Southern Cal, where the soil is wet and the humidity's high. You can't really build a 6-foot wall the same day on that footing, because that footing's not gonna be strong enough to hold it. It'll start to lean on you or something. But in this case, you can go all the way up out in this climate, and that footing's going to be strong enough to support it. Day 1, we're still on day 1 of the pour for the wall. These are tongue and groove. Tongue and groove, I'll tell you something about tongue and groove that makes it, you'd think it's simpler, to set a tongue and groove wall versus a typical block where you've got head joints. And it's really not any easier because it's precision. All your columns have to be perfect, or every course above that, in order to avoid extra cuts. So in other words, what happened here on our wet set on the primary block for the initial course on the wet set, as you're setting down in wet concrete, some of that cream comes up in between the blocks, so you get a slight spread on that first course. And all the courses above that are nice and tight fit because they're not trying to move around. You're not getting that cream coming up. So we had to make, after the first course was set, we had to make a slight adjustment on the second course up. That way we could come up plumb on every column. Every one of these columns is basically like a cold joint, which are usually called for about every 30 to 40 feet, depends where you are. But they like a 30 to 40 foot cold joint in a block wall for movement reasons. That way you don't get a crack that's just randomly coming down your wall. It could actually crack on those columns or a cold joint. So it was kind of nice to have those for that purpose. Also, it had a decorative feature to it because we had the tan double splits. Right here at the corner of the house, we lined that column up. We know that there's some studs in the corner of that building, which is where you're going to probably fasten the wrought iron or gate. So we centered pretty much off the studs in that corner to the center of that column. That way we could have something substantial to hook up to on both sides. We did the same thing on the other side of the house as well. So there it is. That's why there's no head joint. So you can potentially lay these much quicker than the average block because you don't have to butter the ends. There's your double verticals coming up in your column. The one thing about these tongue and groove blocks that you don't really think about until, you know, it's kind of done, but in the future I probably would, and anyone watching would know this now, that whenever you have a bond beam in a tongue and groove, where those two blocks meet, you lose that tongue and groove at that bond beam, so you could virtually see daylight through them at a bond beam, unless you completely grout that, unless you don't use any bond beams. So you'd have to do a custom order on your pallets for sure, because you don't want bond beams in the middle of a tongue and groove really, because you're losing half of that tongue. Well, guys, we started this block yesterday. One day into the block work, the foundation, pouring, and placement of all the block. This is day 2. We're at day 2 at about half the day. So we've pretty much wrapped this one up over here. We got to do the grout. You can see we've got your grout stop fabric. Notice that. That's running all the way through. And we got a big old bond beam here on top. We got double 4s in the columns. This will get solid grouted right here, both cylinders all the way down. We'll have a number 4 that's going to go all the way, and that's going to be solid concrete. And then we got to put the flat cap like the other one, and this wall is complete. We've got our verticals. So in other words, this bond beam is going to be filled with concrete, this top block solid concrete with rebar. Then every 4 feet we've got a vertical, you know, one of these rebars coming down every 4 feet, tying into that top bond beam, and then double verticals on the columns. So it's really going to be really solid. And the way these columns work is actually creates a cold joint in the wall. You'll notice here we just got some grout right here straight down. So what it's doing is giving you a cold joint. So we've got cold joints basically at every column. So we've got right here about a 33-foot run, cold joint at column. Then we got about a 14-foot run, cold joint, another 14, cold joint, column. Same thing, kind of got the same look going over here. Got your columns. These are all wet set yesterday. We got your column on the corners where that gate, existing gate, will end up hanging again off of that column or off the post and latch on the column, either way. Tongue and groove block, 4,000 psi block. It's not your basic 2,000 stuff. And then you got your double splits on top of that. Here's your column build right here, double bars right out of that footing. So for instance, the way that we've positioned these columns, you can see here on both sides of the house, column, corner house, in case they want a gate, they can hang it off of that column there, which is the strongest point. And also here, you can put another one here. So if you want like a dog run, whatever areas, little secluded spots, you could have them. Then of course, the front of garage, another potential point of gate. Actually, there is going to be a custom made wrought iron gate across here, 6 foot. So we got a 6-foot column here, 6-foot column, 6-foot gate, and it's a nice wide gate. You know, you can get stuff through it. 6 foot, and then behind this column we drop to 5 feet. Then in front of it to the street we drop to 4, and we drop to 3, a couple of step downs, maintaining a 3-foot height off of the grade of the dirt with your step downs. Same thing here, another gate right here, 6 foot high, 6-foot high column, 4-foot gray block in the middle, 2-foot wrought iron on top, meeting the top of the columns. Then we've got a double big boy swing gate, wrought iron, double with an arch, 15 foot for RV access right over here. So you can see some of that stamped terracotta, and that's a ashlar pattern that we use there. Got those mats from Concrete Accessories and their color because I couldn't get it out here. anywhere out. You can't get matte, you can't get color. So you either got to order or you got to go to Vegas. So that's what I do. So in the next video, I'm going to be showing the pour on that stamped. That's like a 25 by 30 area. And it took us, I think we were able to get it with one load, a full load of concrete. Right now they're mixing up some grout. You notice the bars leaning against the wall. That's where the cells are in the block that those verticals will slide down in. Once the concrete goes in, they can slide those down and then they'll overlap our verticals that were stubbed out of the footing. We went through, let's see, we ended up using about 4 pallets of concrete mix. Each one of those pallets has approximately a yard of concrete on them. So it took us 4 yards to grout this wall, in other words. And it's all done by hand with buckets and a mixer. And what we had to do in building this wall, because there's some challenges out here with the wind conditions. Whenever you're doing a wall where you have potential of a wind coming up that could, you know, be anywhere from 20 to 40 miles an hour wind at any given time, it could knock your whole wall over if you don't get it grouted before that wind comes up. So we did watch the weather before we started this project. Some crucial things you have to do. And because we didn't have the rebar stubbed up 100% 6 foot height, we couldn't potentially grout on the way up unless we stabbed our verts first, use open ends to go wrap around our verticals, which is a lot more work. So we just built this super quick and grouted the whole 6 foot all at once. We knew that, you know, by looking ahead at weather that we could potentially do that in this situation. But if you did want to work on a wind day, or if you got stuck on a windy day, you'd have to use open ends, have your vertical, grout every 3 feet on the way up. You know, there's ways you can do things to work around certain conditions. Now right here, I didn't have the greatest drill on me at this time. I didn't load out with a roto hammer, in other words, so we had to punch holes through the column block to push horizontal bars through our bond beam through the columns. So we had to do a little drilling there. So in other words, the horizontals and the bond beam pass through into the columns, which is important because those columns aren't that big. There's not a lot of girth to them, a lot of concrete reinforcement. There's not a lot of width, so you need them to hook up to something. And that's what we did. We ran the bond beam through the columns. This is a tricky little area over here working around all these utilities. You've got your pole box for electrical, you've got your pole box for your cable and communications, but they still need access, so we worked the wall around it. So the access point to those boxes now would be through this yard. Yeah, make sure we stay tuned for these next videos because this is a multi-video project. We're going to do about 5 different videos in this project, and you're going to see a complete transformation of this particular property to pretty much a showpiece, the nicest one in the neighborhood as you get to the end of this. Also, I'm going to walk through, remember I was mentioning the wrought iron railing and that, and I organized all that and who's going to do it and who's installing it. Marcelo is his name. He has a wrought iron fabrication. He does all his fabrication out here, Fort Mohave, Arizona, but it all ends up in, a lot of it ends up in the OC, Orange County, California. He's going to be doing, I'm going to walk through his shop and show the fabrication before the install as well. One of these videos in this series. All right, I'm back on the job site about 7 in the morning and 3 days footing to complete wall. We had 8 guys though, all, you know, experienced masons. Let's just take a little walk around this thing. I mean, this turned out really nice and I'm real happy with the outcome. Homeowner loves it, and I haven't been back since they finished this, and it's been let's see, finished Friday, today's Monday, so this is kind of what we've got. Right here, the homeowner is going to end up putting a gate here, kind of conceal that thing. Looks like the homeowner's been busy this weekend and ran some sleeves right over here, which is great. Here's the dog enclosure. It's going to be right there. We've got underground electrical in this neighborhood, and it runs right at the back of this property here. So as you can see here, this wall is out from the other because of this electrical situation. As you can see out here in the front, we've got some 6-foot high columns. The rest of this wall is only going to be about 5 feet once the grade comes up and the gravel, the decorative gravel. In between these columns, we're going to have wrought iron railing to match the double gate over here and the single gate over here, as well as the other side of the garage. But it's going to look sharp when this is all said and done. I'm going to probably most likely be doing the decorative gravel install as well on this property and getting this thing graded. And it's going to require a lot of grading, really. This dirt's all high along here. Got to go below curb so I can get gravel in, push it up there into the hole, bring a bunch of road base in here initially, get it fine graded, compacted, then I'll bring in the decorative gravel. That's my plan anyway. And then I'm gonna have basically a showpiece, the nicest house on the street, basically, yard and house that I can see. If I look down there, we'll look down there. Yeah, this will be the one. All right, I'll talk to you later. So if you like this kind of content, make sure you click on the next video up on your screen. Like, share, subscribe. Help us to get it out there to other people that are interested in this type of stuff. Have a good one. Thanks for watching.